you remember, way back when, about 4 years ago, when my channel was basically just cringe fest and focused more on Star Trek than Ninjago? Do you remember the time I made horrible videos that were just a collection of soulless slideshows and pictures? In one of those videos, I made a prediction as to how the fourth installment of the Kelvin Timeline Star Trek series would go down. My god, how did this get 10,000 views? And the plot of the movie would include Kirk meeting his father, who sacrificed his life to save his son, his wife, and 800 other crew members of the USS Kelvin in the prologue of Star Trek 2009. I had a lot of faith that it would happen. After watching Star Trek Beyond, I was pumped when Paramount announced that there were plans to make a fourth movie. But there has been a pretty big story about the movie's development process since then. So, shall we begin?
Alright, so on July 28th, 2016, 6 days after Star Trek Beyond released in theaters, it was announced that the fourth film would be made and that J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay would be in charge of writing. It was revealed that the plot would include Kirk meeting his dad. Whether this was going to be the main plot of the storyline or a subplot entirely is unknown. Majority of the main cast, Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban, John Cho, Simon Pegg, and Chris Hemsworth were signed on to reprise the roles of Jim Kirk, Spock, Uhura, Bones, Sulu, Scotty, and George Kirk respectively. But after the tragic passing of Anton Yelchin, J.J. Abrams and Simon Pegg stated that there would be no recasting for the role of Pavel Chekhov, and that Anton deserved better, and indeed he did. May he rest in peace. Whether his character was going to be written off or killed off is entirely unknown. Sofia Boutella expressed interest in reprising her role as Jayla. She was accepted into Starfleet Academy during the end of Beyond, and the fourth film would have most likely seen her at the Academy or as a Starfleet officer. I'm not sure if there were any plans on having Alice Eve reprise her role as Carol Marcus, or if Alice herself wanted to return, but I would have loved to see her again. She wasn't seen in Beyond, which according to Pegg was mostly because of her relevancy. In terms of new characters, there were rumors that Denai Guerrera, the same actress who played the badass Wakandan bodyguard Okoye, was considered for one of two female roles, one as a hero, the other as a villain. Pine and Quinto signed contracts to reprise their roles for a fourth film in 2015, and Hemsworth signed on a year later before Beyond's release. Quinto commented that he believed that at least 3 scripts were in development for the Beyond sequel, and 2 other films based on Quentin Tarantino's idea for another Star Trek movie. Later, S.J. Clarkson was confirmed to direct the movie, which would have made her the first woman to direct a film in the Star Trek franchise. Urban expressed confidence that filming would begin sometime in 2019, and there was indication that it would be released in the same year. Everything seemed to be running smoothly. The main cast was in, the main crew members for production was complete, Abrams was returning to produce, and they got a director. It seemed that Star Trek IV was going to happen. But when August 2018 rolled around, things went to a standstill. After Beyond underperformed at the box office, Paramount decided to play it safe with the money in terms of salaries, and because of that, Pine and Hemsworth did not agree with the renegotiations, and they got into a pay dispute, which led to them bailing on any further negotiations. According to Hemsworth, the real reason as to why he chose to leave was because he found the script underwhelming. Despite this, the other cast members were still open to the negotiation table, with some of them, including Quinto and Cho, remaining hopeful that production would still continue. Production itself remained at a standstill since then, and as a result, Clarkson's schedule was freed, and she took on the prequel of the Game of Thrones series. With the loss of Pine and Hemsworth, as well as the loss of their director, Paramount reportedly shelved Star Trek IV, and in January 2019, Star Trek IV was officially cancelled. Fell into development hell, and to this day, it seems that it will remain there for eternity. So yeah, I was bummed to hear that it may or may not be happening when I first saw the news online, as well as researching it on several different sites to see if it was actually cancelled. There's been no evidence indicating that Paramount would be exploring the Kelvin timeline in a different fashion, and it may be ending with Star Trek Beyond. I know there are some purists who hate the 3 reboots since it's not their definition of Star Trek, and there are some who are saying that the Kelvin timeline, or JJ Trek as they derogatorily put it, is dead and want it to not have happened, but it's in there now, man. It's canon. Star Trek 2009 showed that Romulus was destroyed in the Prime timeline, and it's referenced quite a lot in Star Trek Picard, which takes place in the Prime timeline. So yeah, both Kelvin and Prime timelines are indeed connected. That being said, however, Paramount seems to be shifting focus back to the Prime timeline and letting the Kelvin timeline take a back seat, while the Prime timeline is expanded upon with stuff like Star Trek Picard and Star Trek Discovery. Look, I love the Prime timeline era Star Trek. My favorite show is Star Trek The Next Generation. I saw a bit of the original series, but was unable to finish it because of how cheesy it was. I haven't seen Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, Discovery, or Picard yet, but I saw a majority of the original series movies and all of the Next Generation movies. I love Star Trek as much as I love Star Wars, no doubt about it, and I like all of their films, some definitely more than others, but I wouldn't have loved Star Trek if I didn't watch the first entry of the reboots.
Oh, that's weird.
I love modern day's take on Star Trek. Star Trek 2009 rebooted the franchise after the cancellation of Enterprise, which dug the franchise to its grave. With this movie, Abrams basically gave the franchise a shot of adrenaline. Not only did he make Star Trek cool again, he made it cool for the first time for a lot of new fans, myself included. So yeah, I enjoyed the Kelvin Timeline series. And from the 3 reboots, I got more into the franchise, and was introduced to the Next Generation and so forth. I was so immersed in the Kelvin Timeline that I wanted to see more, and I thought we were going to see more, until the planned sequel to Beyond was cancelled. In addition to loving the reboot movies, I also love the cast. Chris Pine provided a great modern representation of Kirk while bringing out the brashness and intelligence of the character, minus the iconic Shatner speech patterns. Zachary Quinto brings out the best parts of Leonard Nimoy's Spock while adding his own flair, especially the human side, allowing us to relate to the character in a great way. And his relationship with Kirk in the Kelvin timeline is great and really sells home the origins of their friendship that the original series established. Zoe Saldana knocked it out of the park as Uhura and plays a much bigger role than in the show. Carl Urban manages to do the lovable, grumpy, sarcastic Bones, almost the exact same way as DeForest Kelley. Simon Pegg is amazing as Scotty and gives something new and exciting to the late James Doohan's own representation. John Cho is amazing as modern Sulu, and while he has an American accent, engaged in a fencing duel that was referenced in The Naked Time. Anton Yelchin's Chekhov was spot on and led to some of the best comedic moments.
Ensign authorization code 95 Victor 2.
Authorization not recognized.
He will be missed, and Beyond was perhaps the best send-off to his character. Pike as a father figure to Kirk was a smart move since he is Kirk's predecessor as captain of the Enterprise in both timelines, and Bruce Greenwood plays him very well. Alice Eve as Carol Marcus and Sofia Boutella as Jayla were also great, and if the Kelvin timeline is ever explored again, I would love to see more of them. I love the rest of the cast, especially Eric Bana as Nero, Cumberbatch as Khan, Peter Weller as Marcus, and Idris Elba as Kral. As I've said earlier, the main cast was rumored or stated to return, but there was another source of information that detailed an earlier contract that adds weight to that statement. Apparently, before their updated contracts, the primary cast regulars were originally signed for a 3-film deal, which ended with Beyond. So, maybe Star Trek Beyond is the last time we'll see them back in their roles. Maybe it is the last movie set in the Kelvin timeline. Besides, some of them are now in higher paid movies. Chris Pine is currently playing Steve Trevor in the Wonder Woman movies in the DCEU. Zoe Saldana and Chris Hemsworth are playing Gamora and Thor respectively in the MCU. Perhaps the Star Trek franchise is just a stopping point for their careers, and now that most of them are starring in bigger movies, going back to Star Trek may no longer be something they're interested in doing. Not saying that they don't want to return, Pine said that he wanted to return as Kirk, but he's waiting for a word from Paramount, which probably won't be happening anytime soon.
I don't know. I mean, I'd love to be involved, and we'll see what happens, and I'll wait the phone call. Until then, I look forward to it.
But going back to Paramount, after Star Trek Beyond underperformed, as I've stated earlier, Paramount wanted to give the actors less money than they originally agreed upon. But I left out another key factor to their decision to water down the salaries. Paramount's main argument was that since Pine, Hemsworth, and Saldana are now in higher paid movies, the Star Trek franchise isn't as profitable as the bigger blockbusters. Okay. I understand why Paramount would want to do that, but judging by how popular Star Trek is, since it's basically Star Wars' twin brother, that comparison of profitability would most likely trigger some Trekkies or Trekkers. I'm not triggered, but bold claim, Paramount. Bold claim. If Paramount gave the rights of Star Trek to Disney the same way George Lucas gave the rights of Star Wars and Lucasfilms to Disney, the bigger money-making business would not hesitate to make as many Star Trek films as possible. In all honesty, I wouldn't be surprised if Disney becomes the only movie-making corporation in existence in the next decade. But there might be a little glimmer of light at the end of this tunnel of insanity. Paramount is making more TV shows and possibly more movies, with Quentin Tarantino and Noah Hawley. Sorry if I butchered that name. Tarantino's Star Trek film is based on a pitch that he sent to Abrams and Paramount, and that he would direct the film while a screenplay was being made. But he later ditched the director's chair in favor of working on smaller budget films. On the flip side, in November 2019, Pine signed on to return in a fourth installment of the reboot movies along with Quinto, Saldana, Peg, Urban, and the film would be directed and written by Hawley. Whether this will be the Star Trek IV that was originally planned or an entirely new movie with a new plot is still unknown. It's most likely the latter because there was no information on Hemsworth returning. I don't know if Cho, Butella, and Eve are in talks to return, but fingers crossed that they are. The only cracks in any hope that this will be made, however, is that Peg said he didn't know about the cast returning, and Paramount put Hawley's movie on indefinite hold because they got a new president for the industry, and also most likely because of COVID-19. So after hearing about Hawley's entrance and the return of possibly another reboot Star Trek, my hype just went way back up. Still, barely anything's been confirmed, so don't go running around with it as fact. Overall, the Kelvin timeline has had a pretty rough roller coaster of a ride since 2016. But it seems like it's going to be revisited, and some of the reboot cast are returning for another film. As to when we'll see more of the Kelvin timeline on the big screen is still unknown, especially with the whole pandemic going on. And we don't know what Tarantino's Star Trek is about. There are some speculations going on that the reboot cast will be in his film, but at this point we have no idea. So again, take the Hawley and Tarantino stuff with a grain of microsalt.
You want me to do what?
What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what?
But I'm pretty hopeful for the franchise. There's a slight chance that my optimism will come back to bite me later. If Star Trek Beyond does end up being the last film set in the Kelvin timeline, I'll be sad, but I'll have Discovery and Picard to look at and enjoy. But we may not have seen the last of the Kelvin timeline, at least not yet, so whatever they do next, I hope they go back to it.
You really want to head back out there, huh?
Yes! Anyways guys, that's enough from me. I hope you enjoyed this one, and are as hopeful for the Kelvin timeline as I am. Unless you're watching this from the future, and all the news turned out to be false, then well shit, what a waste of a video. If you enjoyed this one, then don't be shy, be sure to warp right into that like button and fire photon torpedoes at the subscribe button. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter at King Nightfury. And as always, I will see you in the next video. Live long and prosper.